before class that my youngest brother, who helps me a lot with this, is in the emergency room, something with his kidneys. So, I don't like him that much.
Where is he?
Arlington, Mansfield, something like that, not very far. He's kind of close. He's gonna text me at any, well, I don't know when they're gonna figure it out, but it may just be dehydration. We don't know, but he's either there already or on his way. I went a few years ago, I think I might have told y'all this before. I went a few years ago to the hospital. I was having massive pains. I was scared. It was the worst pain I had ever gone through. I thought I was dying. I was like, I don't know what, and so I rushed to the emergency room. I was speeding. I was driving on the wrong side of a divided highway to get to the emergency room over at HEB. And I just ran up onto the sidewalk and rushed into the ER and threw my keys. I was like, do what you want with my car. I'm tired. Then they made me do paperwork.
Oh, my God. Don't pass out till you do your paperwork.
And I'm upset. And by
You
the
got
time
any insurance?
No, I don't have insurance. So
They want to know.
they did.
Yeah.
By the time I'm signing, I'm like, it's kind of gone. I'm fine. I don't know what it was, and so they're like, well, we're going to take you back anyway. I was like, I'm not kidding. This went on for over an hour. I was in the worst pain ever. And I text my brothers, my 3 brothers, and I'm like, guys, I'm in the emergency room. I have no idea what's going on. I feel like I'm dying. They're running all these tests on me and everything, and they're like, if you die, I get your car. And the other brother gets your dog, because my dog was annoying.
Spoken like true.
Yeah, true brothers, and they're
definitely brothers right there.
yeah. So it was. So there was a whole lot of sympathy.
Made you laugh though, I bet.
Well, I wasn't hurting at that time, so I was. But that's not the end of the story. So I'm sitting there texting. When we're texting up a storm, they're obviously making fun of me, and then the doctor comes in. I was like, hold on, they're coming in. They've got the results. They know what it is. They're coming in. The doctor, and I was like, I'll text you back in a few minutes. Doctor comes in. You got kidney stones, man. Stop drinking so much Coke. I'm like,
Yeah.
he goes, you have 3. You're gonna pass 3 more here. They're in my kidney, and it hurts like crazy going to your bladder. So I wrote back, while I was talking, it took me like 15 minutes to take care of all of that. Any update? That's what they sent. Any update? And I was like, I have lung, liver, and pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
Silence. I shut my brothers up. All 3 of them, nobody sent anything for like 10, 15 minutes. Finally, one of them is like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you could tell the sadness coming through the text. I said, yep, I'm kidding. It was kidney stones. They start spamming pictures of rocks and boulders.
Surprised they didn't say, well, we're coming to get our stuff.
I get the truck anyway.
What kind of car did you have?
A very good one back then. I've got a good one now, but. All right. I told you last time I was going to try to figure out how to do this Roman history thing for the 5th century of Rome. When I was timing it, when I was practicing presenting and timing it at home, there's no way I can fit it in. It's longer, I didn't have enough time, and I certainly didn't want to chop it in half. So I've added a filler to the end of class here. And I did this for Roy, because he keeps asking for it. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and give you. He keeps asking for the proofs of the dating of the book of Revelation. And so this is just one of the ones that comes up. I've seen this for a long time. I copied and pasted from the internet. So it's not my words. It's way better than what I would have done. I've copied and pasted from it, but the last line I added my 2 cents into it. So we'll get that at the very end of class. Remember, the last line is my addition.
Yes.
Very proud of it.
You get the last
I get credit for the last
Who
line.
gets the last word? Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna just do 11 and 12 tonight. It's not very hard at all. You have cross references to Christ all over the place. I just kind of want to make one point of it kind of at the end of the section. And there's a couple of things you can learn from Ezekiel 37 that we'll cover as well. But remember the context. Going back, we've already covered this. But remember the context. He's got Israel going into this Assyrian captivity because they've been wicked and played the harlot, and God's going to destroy them and all of that. And he is setting this up, and Paul is saying, hey, remember when Isaiah was talking about this? Chapters 9, 10, 11, 12. It goes back and re-quotes chapter 1. He says, what Isaiah was talking about, our version of it is happening now. You get this antitype or prototype, and then the event that follows after the pattern. The pattern is set up back in the 700s BC, and then the event happens in its New Testament version, the type. So the words are antitupos and tupos in the Bible. I think tupos is mentioned a whole lot of times. I think antitupos is like 2-3 times. Tom, do you know 2-3 times of antitupos is in there? It's not as much, but the point is there. And I always got them backwards. I always put the type first and the antitype because anti was against or after or whatever, but it's anti.
Yeah.
So, but these guys help me figure it out. It's the A-N-T-E comes first. So keep that in context. Paul is directly quoting it, saying, remember when Isaiah said this, it's now happening, or the real version of it is happening, or the more important version of it is happening. And then we get to chapter 11. And you get 11:1, a rod that hath come forth from the stock of Jesse, a branch from his roots is fruitful, and he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. There should be no question that's Christ to everybody, but you have plenty of cross-references if you want to go look those up. If you're not convinced, if verse 5 doesn't convince you or whatever, then you can go look all these up. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time trying to convince you that the branch, the root of Jesse is Christ here. This verse should be able to do it for you. Okay? And remember, take out the chapter breaks. Paragraph breaks are good. They're usable sometimes, but chapter breaks were added 1,000 years later or so. I don't know exactly how far. Maybe after Isaiah, maybe getting close to 2,000 years, maybe. So don't always sit there and say, okay, I'm in a new chapter, I'm in a new topic. Don't let your mind do that to you. It happens all the time. It causes so many misinterpretations, mistranslations. Keep it in context. Just keep the thought going. That next chapter builds, like when we covered the heavens and earth. That chapter 11 is a set up chapter for chapter 12. Do not decouple those. When Christ's kingdom is set up, when he comes and he's the root of Jesse starts bearing good fruit, you get this weird verse, and again with Isaiah, your brain needs to start with metaphor, not literal. Okay, remember, he is Mr. Metaphor. He is metaphor, 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 metaphor. Sometimes he tells you it's a metaphor. Many, many times he doesn't tell you it's a metaphor. Like even the little boy will lead them, which is obvious what that is, but he doesn't tell you. you kind of have to go to the New Testament. Christ, when he's 12 years old, goes into the temple and is teaching everybody. He's leading them. The wolf, the leopard, the young lion, they're all gonna lie down together. You're gonna get in Isaiah a bunch of verses like this. You'll have several in the back half, in the 60s, the 60s chapters, where you have all these different animals lying down together. The lion and the cow, or the lion and the sheep, or whatever. Predator, prey. Oppressor, oppressed. You're going to have, and the best example I can think of is Saul and Paul. At first, he's this predator, but God slays him, not literally, but with the word. Right? Because what did the previous verse say? What did verse 5 say? He's gonna come slay them with those words, with his mouth. And when he starts converting these persecutors like Saul, that's where the predators are going to start becoming one with the Christians. Okay, that's what you've got going there, and you'll see it many times. You can, again, look through the latter parts of the book of Isaiah and you'll see it more, and you see it enough that it starts to become clear what it's talking about. The little boy, when he was 12 years old, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions, and all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. That's Christ. And I shouldn't even need to say the how do we know, because Christ was not on earth during Isaiah's time. But these two signs, there are these two ways to study Isaiah that I keep going back to, because when I read the book, to me it's extremely redundant. We're going to be to chapter 66, and I'll be like, see, Christ came and the Gentiles are added to the church. I'm just not going to stop saying that.
Yeah.
Okay? We get into the 40s, and he's like, and you're going to be a light unto the Gentiles. He just doesn't stop. The whole book is that. So how do you know what time period he's concerned with? He's focused on, because he keeps sprinkling in the Assyrians and the Babylonians and all of that. That's not his focus. That's setting up for the days when Christ comes, when he comes riding into town on a donkey. You have Christ coming, or you have the inclusion of the Gentiles. These are two very easy ways to understand what a lot of these passages are talking about. Isaiah 11 verse 10 has both of them. It's a very easy verse to understand, when a lot of the other verses might not be easy to understand. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for a sign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. To me, that is one of the easier ones to understand. Because when you are in Isaiah's time, the 700s BC, if he's saying that, that's a weird thing for them. This is a weird concept for them to grasp. What? The Gentiles are gonna, what does this mean? I'm pretty sure it did not compete with them. That makes no sense. Why would the Gentiles come? Why are we concerned about the Gentiles? We're Jews. We're holy. So he keeps saying it. He says it over and over and over again, because it was a difficult thing for them to understand. And it was a difficult thing to the apostles, if you remember that. So if it's difficult for the apostles, to understand, imagine how difficult it would be for somebody in 722 BC. Right? It's going over their head. I can almost guarantee you. That's my opinion.
It was too far before Christ being born.
Exactly.
Way too far.
Exactly.
You are out of your mind, you know. The cow's not gonna jump over the moon.
And when you get into the 40s, you start talking about I prophesied short-term prophecies, I prophesied long-term prophecies. So these long-term prophecies is what he's talking about here. And they're going to come true, whereas your rocks and sticks can't do that. I can.
You know, as smart as Paul was, and he didn't understand.
I think he got it before anybody.
Well, he did on the road to Damascus.
Oh, you're talking about when he was Saul?
Yeah, Saul.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, he did.
Peter
He
didn't
missed it bad.
understand about the Gentiles, so, you
Right. So these are Paul and Peter,
know. And they studied all these scriptures and said, you know, they were learning.
and they're the scholarly, intellectually righteous giants. Yeah, I don't even want to say of that century. I'm going to say of all time, right? Right? Don't count Christ. But after that, Paul, Peter, Moses, Noah, Elijah. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple I missed, but these are the all time. This is like the starting five for the NBA. All star, all time, all star. You know.
Front line.
And Saul misses it. Peter has to be corrected on it. I think it was Peter. One of the apostles had to be corrected on it. So it's easier for us to get it. One, pretty sure we're all Gentiles, technically, right? I don't know if there's any Jewish blood in here, but it doesn't matter anymore. Christian could be Jew, and all the first Christians were all Jews anyway. But it's easy. So forget the Romans 15. Don't read that part yet. It's easy because you're like, Christ is going to come, the Gentiles will be part of the church. You can just read it and know. But Romans 15 quotes it and says, it's now happening. So there's no question, there's no controversy. And I'll get to Romans 15 like on the next slide, so if you're wondering what it says. And I put these Revelation verses in here not to talk about Revelation or anything like that. Normally that's what I do. I'm just showing that it's Christ. Okay, not going to go into any Revelation theory right now. But the Lion of the tribe of Judah is Christ, the root and the offspring of Jesse and David. Jesse's David's father. Verse 11. Now remember, we just had Christ, and we just had a verse about the Gentiles coming into the church. And Paul quoting it and saying it is now happening there in the first century. And then what does he say? And it shall come to pass in that day, in the days that Christ comes and adds the Gentiles to the church, the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. This is a little more literal here. A second time, again the remnant. Because the first one was the pattern. But this time that he's talking about here, the second time, is the main event in the first century. Does that make sense? And he's saying these Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, all of these, this area, right? He's using them as the nations, and really the oppressors. Not even so much the nations, but the oppressors or the enemies of God's people. Because Assyria is definitely looked upon as a big-time oppressor, right? They were everybody's oppressor. Egypt was the most famous story between the Jews and the Egyptians, right? The whole start of the nation, 1447 or whenever that was, right? So that's a big time. So Egypt, being an oppressor nation, Sodom being a bad guy nation. They weren't oppressors, the Jews weren't there yet. But when you say, you're like Sodom, the Jews are like, oh, whoa. If you say, you're like Egypt, they're like, oh, I don't want to be around those people. They are oppressors. They made Moses come out with all the people when they crossed the Red Sea. So these things represent oppressors. Keep this thought in your head, because we come back to it in chapter 13 and 14. We come back to it in chapter 19. Here he's saying Assyria and Egypt, they are metaphorical for the oppressors that would be there in that day when he needed to save the Christians from their first century persecution. Okay? So this is not me just saying he does it. He's making this example. I'm not making that up. He's literally making that point here in verse 11. Type, anti-type, type. That's what's happening. It's not literal Assyria. Where is Assyria in 30 AD?
It's gone.
Gone. Bad gone. Long gone. There's no Assyrians. 612, 609, what's the date on that? BC?
Yeah.
Late 7th century, they're destroyed. They are gone forever. They don't come back. It's not literal Assyria would not be there when Christ comes and the Gentiles start being added to the church. I beat this to death, right? Right? This is like my 100th time to make this point. By the time we're done with chapter 66, I will have reached the 1,000 mark on how many times I beat this in. Because it's like every chapter. The book of Joel. The book of Joel does it too. When you get into the book of Joel, and I think we touched on this last week or the week before. It might have been a few weeks ago, because Vanover was sitting up here, and I had her read either the Joel verse or the Acts verse, and I think Tom read the other one. But Joel chapter 2, they go into this captivity. I'm pretty sure it's the Babylonian captivity. But he removes that nation from afar, and they come out of that captivity. But then, as you start getting to the end of 2 and the start of 3, he's going to bring back the captivity. They're going to go into captivity a second time. But there's a time stamp on it that you cannot argue with. Because Joel 2, 28, 29, 30, whatever the chapter ends with, is quoted in Acts chapter 2, verse 16. And it says, and this is that which was spoken of by Joel the prophet. And it quotes the end of Joel chapter 2, the pouring out of the Spirit. And I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Sons shall prophesy, daughters shall dream dreams. That verse, that passage. So there's a timestamp on this second captivity. It's just like the one in Isaiah 11:11. There's a timestamp on it. And in that day when Christ comes and the Gentiles are added, what does it say? The Gentiles shall seek this Christianity that was coming. Sorry, Tom told me not to go backwards on it. Verse 12, he shall set up a sign for the nations, shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And here's that Romans 15 verse. It is so important because it's so the point of the book. If somebody says, what is the book of Isaiah about? You say, it's about the Gentiles being added to the church. That's what it's about. And that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, for this cause I will confess to thee among the Gentiles, and sing unto thy name. And again he said, rejoice, Gentiles, with his people. It's combining, we're going to get to this in like a slide or two. Rejoice with his people. Jew, Gentile would be made one, right? That's Ephesians chapter 2. And again, praise the Lord, all you Gentiles, and laud him, all you people. And again, Isaiah said, And he goes right back to the verse we were talking about. There shall be a root of Jesse, and he shall rise to reign over the Gentiles, and in him shall the Gentiles trust. It's a big event. Guys, this is a super easy concept for us to understand. We all know this. We've been taught from day one. We've been taught Ephesians chapter 2 since probably high school. We understand that the Gentiles can be a part of Christ's kingdom. Better be that way, because we're all Gentiles, right? We're in the wrong building. You can read John 12 if you want. I just wanted to focus on it's another example that he will draw all men. And when you go read the chapter, there's 3 or 4, kind of in the back half of that chapter, there's 3 or 4. And Isaiah said this, and Isaiah said this, and Isaiah said this, and Isaiah said this. And they're all being fulfilled right now. Because the first half was like talking about persecutions that they were going under. And then he gets the all men part in there. And then it keeps going. Ezekiel 37. I've mentioned this before. I wanted to go over it a little better. But it reminds me so much of Isaiah 11:13. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart. The adversaries of Judah, kind of what we said, a couple of, was it the previous verse about Assyria and Egypt and all them. The adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. Ephraim is the north. It reminds me so much of Ezekiel 37 and the parable, I'm not sure what it's called, story passage about the 2 sticks. One stick represents the southern kingdom, one stick represents the northern kingdom, and he's told put these 2 sticks together because they're going to be reunited when King David comes. So many people take that literal. Well, it's not King David, it's a type of King David, meaning Jews and Gentiles would be reunited under Christ. So I think it's the last verse there in chapter 37, where it talks about King David coming. It's not literal. That's like somebody, that's like the whole John the Baptist thing. Hey, I'm going to send you Elijah the prophet. They think, some people still think Elijah the prophet is going to come back before that great and terrible day of the Lord. They miss the New Testament verses where Christ is saying, yeah, John the Baptist is this type of Elijah the prophet. This is what Isaiah and Micah and all those guys were talking about. It's metaphor. It's metaphor. The unfaithful Pharisees, those guys never saw metaphor. They don't get it. That's why he's talking to them. Chapter 21. I think that's where the question is asked. We've asked, I think it was you, I don't remember who asked the question of why did he use this language?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know, we'll go over that in depth one of these days. And Ephesians 2, 11 through 22 is so critical because I think that, I've been saying this from day one in here, that to me, those 11, 12 verses sum up the book of Isaiah. The Jew and the Gentile shall become one, the twain shall become one in Christ, being fitly framed together to form the temple of the living God. Ye are that temple, that metaphorical temple, which is the church. That's what Isaiah's talking about. It's not out of context. This is not a weird thing. This is not some weird phrase. It's just Ezekiel 37, the back half. It's Ephesians chapter 2. It's all saying the same stuff. Everybody's going to, the lion and the lamb, the leopard and the cattle, everybody's going to be able to be a part of this kingdom. And then you get this phrase. So it's in Revelation 21:3. This is why I put it here. It's not in Isaiah. It's not Isaiah 13. But Isaiah, the reason why I link it together is Isaiah 13 sounds a lot like Ezekiel 37 to me. In Ezekiel 37, when he's talking about uniting the north and the south back together again under Christ, and they will be my people and I will be their God. Revelation 21:3, talking about the bride of Christ, and they shall be his people and God himself shall be with them and be their God. It says the exact same thing in 2 Corinthians 6:16. Revelation 21:3 is quoting 2 Corinthians 6:16. It's the same words. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether we be Jew or Gentile, whether we be bond or free, and we all been made to drink in one Spirit. And then Ezekiel 37 kind of closes out the type of David. They would be reunited under this type of David. Ezekiel's written in what century? 6th, 7th, something like that. Long time ago, right? When was David there? When was David alive? He's like in the 1000s, 1100s, 1000s, somewhere around there. I don't know exactly. He's been dead for a while, but they know who David is. This great spiritual kingly leader. They're like, and so he's telling them, Ezekiel's telling them, this type of David, who you look real highly upon, is going to come and reunite everybody. It's fulfilled in Christ and the church. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake over the river, and it shall smite the 7 streams, and make the men go over dry shod. You should be thinking Exodus, salvation from persecution. You have in Revelation, and the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. That is a direct reference to when the Medes come in, Cyrus comes in. I always said it was Cyrus, and I said that to Ernie. I said that to my brother. He's like, there was no soft C at the beginning of words. I was like, oh. So I learned that from 30 years.
You're speaking English though, right now?
Cyrus?
Yeah, but you're speaking English right now?
I don't know what I'm speaking.
We have a soft C. You can say Cyrus.
So I can say
Yeah,
Cyrus?
you can say Cyrus.
Sweet, because I like it better.
Yeah, no, you can say Cyrus.
So we can say it in English, Cyrus.
Your brother's being very pedantic.
Very pedantic. He's also the one that wanted my truck.
Okay, well there you go. You can say Cyrus. That's
So
fine.
Cyrus, I'm going to use Cyrus because I've said it for 30
You
years.
say
Texas, we
Gaius
say
Julius Caesar. No, you say Gaius Julius Caesar because you're English.
Sweet, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to tell him. Okay, Cyrus. But this is a reference to Cyrus drying up the river so that he can get into Babylon in 539 BC and deliver the Jews from their oppressors. When you have these waters being moved, God, specifically by God, in all these instances, God is removing these waters so that he can bring salvation to his people from their oppressors. So when you see it in Revelation, it's the same thing. That's what it's talking about. Drying up the river, it's metaphorical for, I'm going to save you. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was into Israel in the day that he camped out of the land. This way to salvation for the captives of Assyria. First of all, I'm a little questionable on that because I cannot find anywhere where captives came out of Assyria. Okay, I know they come out of Babylon, but this highway coming out of Assyria, I don't know that the antitype is set up too well. But I don't think it's talking literal. I think stay in context, stay with the root of Jesse, stay with the Gentiles being added. I think this is just more metaphor. Keep it in context, keep it in the time of Christ. And this way to salvation, and when you get later on in Isaiah, you have the word highway used instead of way, and it's a little more obvious. But I think this is just talking about Christ. It's the way to salvation. To them, anybody facing their oppressors back then would really want a way, a literal way, away from their salvation. So when he's saying this, it's striking chords with them. It's landing with them. They're like, yes, please deliver us, God. But I think what he's really talking about, because we're going to get to the waters here in a second, and that one's a little easier to see. And again, I see half of you writing. The slides are going out on the CCD now. So if you're not on the list, please see me after class and we'll get you added to the list. And you'll get the slides. So again, Cody, if I can't find anywhere where the Jewish Assyrian captives are come out of Assyria from the north, when the north goes into obliteration. I don't know if you can look for that, but I searched and I can't find
Yeah, I
it.
can try.
Okay. It's helpful for me if they did.
Sure.
It fits the anti-type type better. But if not, we're just left with, it's just metaphorical for the first century. It's not even type anti-type at
I'll
that
see
point.
if I can find it.
Okay. Chapter 12, I don't have but one slide on chapter 4. It says, therefore with joy shall ye draw water out of the wells of salvation. Should be a little easier for you to see the metaphor here. In that day, when the root of Jesse comes, Gentiles are added to the church, John 4 was going to happen. The woman at Jacob's well. He would give thee living water. Whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in a well of water springing up unto everlasting life. If any man thirst, let him come to me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. He's quoting the Old Testament. Where exactly, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I think he's just, from what I understand, he's referencing all of the Old Testament that talks about these wells of salvation, these waters of salvation. It's the word of God, the Spirit of God, Christ, all of these things. Did they get literal water out of, if it's the Assyrians coming out, if it's the northern tribes coming out of Assyrian captivity, which there's I don't think there's any documentation of that. But let's act like the Babylonian one. Let's act like it's Judah, which it's not talking about, but let's act like it is. When they come out of Babylonian captivity, they are decreed out by the earthly leader of the ruled world. They're not under duress. It's not like the Exodus where they need water. It's kind of a reference again back to the Exodus, I think. More so than it is this literal Assyrian captivity, coming out of this literal Assyrian captivity. Because again, I just can't find it anywhere. Now they do come out of Babylonian captivity. But they do it with orders from the king of the world, Cyrus, Darius, and they're not going to be in distress, so they're not going to need this supernatural water source. And there's no record of it anywhere in the Bible, any historical text or anything. They could just get regular water along the route. I'm pretty sure this is talking about Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, Christ, the way to salvation for your soul. Yes?
Chapter 40, verse 3, a voice of one calling in the desert, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the wilderness a highway for our God.
Yeah. You're getting ahead.
I'm trying.
You're exactly right. That's what you're giving away the ending.
No, I didn't know.
I needed people to question me right now
Well,
and go look at it. I was questioning you. You questioned me and then provided the answer. You read it for them. And what is that passage? What is he talking about there? What passage is he reading? Isaiah 40.
God.
What is he talking about? Who's that talking about? The voice of the one crying in the wilderness. John the Baptist. It's John the Baptist. He's going to make this highway. You think John the Baptist got out there with some shovels and some asphalt? Nope. Got out there with the Word of God. You're giving away my answers, man.
I thought if you can figure it out, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's good. It's encouraging that you can make that connection now. You've been hanging out with me for too long.
Talking too
You need
much
to go to
about
somebody else's place.
talking too much about the stock market.
Yeah, I know. Okay. We have a few minutes. There was no way I was going to get in the Rome stuff. We'll start with that next time. I'm backing everything up a little bit because just the minutes of the hour-long class do not line up too well. And Roy asked me, he's asked me 2 or 3 times, and I think it's important what he's asking me, can you provide some of the things on why you think, and not me, but just people in general, think Revelation was written in the 60s AD versus the 95, 96 AD date that Eusebius gives. And I've kind of told you why I don't buy into the Eusebius date at all, and it's like the only proof for that date. This is one of the many reasons, not to mention all of the harlot stuff that we've already talked about. That should be plenty for you. That was the 3rd class. That was class 3. And it'll be hopefully on YouTube soon. CBS 11 is going to help me make these videos. I don't know if y'all heard that.
We're making on Channel 11.
Okay. I'm not going to show a lot of stuff. Like, there'll be like 4 of y'all and my mom are going to be the only people that watch this. Revelation 13:18. This is going to get some of y'all scratching your heads. And remember, the last line is mine. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. All right, everybody wants to make this Satan, Lucifer, which we get to soon. You're not going to agree with me? No, don't turn there. You won't agree with me initially there either, first time you hear it. But this is talking about a man, and his number is 666, 666. Does anybody have any reference besides Satan? Don't say Satan. What do you think this might be talking about? Not you, Tom. You already know the answer. Nero. Nero is correct. I think you know that because you have Floyd Wallace's book. I think that's why. 666, and this is cut and paste, these are not my words. I'm not the one that came up with this. I heard this in high school. My dad taught it, he heard it from somebody and taught it to us. So we're talking early 1990s or something like that I heard this. There is a practice called, I don't know how to pronounce it, Gematria, this word here. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've known of the system. I didn't actually learn what it was called until recently, but it's where you assign numbers to various names in Hebrew. They had this numbering system, and it had been going on for a long time. It wasn't a new thing there in the 1st century. It's a Jewish technique in which their letters are assigned numerical values. In the case of Nero Caesar, the way that they wrote his name was, the way I pronounce it in not English, is Neron Qesar. That might be close. How would you say it? Close enough?
Caesar would be pronounced Qesar.
Qesar?
Yeah.
But is that in Latin or is that in
That's
Hebrew?
Latin. Yeah.
So how they said it in Hebrew, I don't know. And you read from right to left. So it's Nero Qesar. Neron Qesar. That was written, anytime they talk about Nero Caesar, that's the way they wrote his name. Neron Qesar. They went backwards. When you assign the values in that Gematria system, each of those letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, each of those letters gets a value. And they're constant values. They don't change. They're the same values today as they were 2,000 years ago, as they were 3,000 years ago, or whenever they started using the system. I don't know its origins. So when you spell it out, nun, resh, vav, nun, again, n, Kof, Samek, Resh. These are their stated values. This is like saying pi equals 3.14. It doesn't change. They don't change throughout time.
Okay.
So when you do that, when you spell out Neron Qesar, and you assign this Gematria values to them, it comes up with the number of a man, Nero Qesar. This is for your dating, written under Nero Qesar, not Domitian Caesar, in 95.
What was the year of Nero?
Nero was 54 to 68.
Wasn't he the most evil?
Oh man.
Depends on.
When Caligula was Caligula was nuts. Nero might have been meaner.
Well, I don't know how much we want to get into it, but
I don't.
Nero was just really messed up. Let's put it that. That's
He killed his mom.
Well, and he also mutilated people for certain reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then would use them and then throw them off a cliff.
Yeah.
He was bad. He was a bad dude.
Yeah. That's putting it in one way. Yeah.
But he's very bad. He's very bad. To answer your question, he's either the worst or second worst. Whatever. That's terrible.
He wanted people to worship him.
Every Caesar.
That's not a unique thing.
Was there a mark on the people who?
Yeah. Again, you.
I mean, an actual, tattoo.
Yeah, you can get into that. I don't want to cover that right now. I don't. Let me research it first. I know what you're referencing, the mark of the beast and all of that, to do with commerce and all that. I know what you're referencing. Let me speak from a position of strength instead of remembering something I heard 30 years ago. So back to this Gematria. They use Hebrew because the people reading this, the Christians, were all Hebrews. I don't know a number, but almost all of them in the first century started off as Jews. Some Gentiles start converting over. So it's a Hebrew thing. When the world was shifting over to that, what is it called, Koine Greek, that common language that everybody knew. But they don't want everybody to understand. They only want the faithful to understand. He starts his persecution. He really gets going when he burns Rome. He's got these plans to remodel this section of downtown Rome into this great big luxurious palace type thing or whatever. And the day after it all burns down, he's like, look, in honor of all the people that just died, we're going to do this. And they're like, how do you have those plans so fast? And he's like, it was the Christians. That's really literally what he does. He got caught because he unveils his plans for this new palace too fast. So that starts in 64. The use of the Gematria to calculate the numbers suggests that it's pointing to an actual person. Nero Qesar lines up. I've never seen another example using this system of anybody remotely close to that time period. I've never seen arguments against this other than, well, it's not talking about, Revelation's not talking about Nero Qesar, therefore it can't be him. That's the only argument against this 666 Gematria thing. In some of the transcripts, you have, in these 5th and 3rd century AD transcripts, some of them switch over to 616. Because in their version, they stopped calling him Neron Qesar, and they switch it, I think, to Latin, and I think they call him Nero. So they drop an N. Well, the value of an N was 50. So you drop it down to 616. So you have several translations, not a lot, but a few transcripts where they stop calling him Neron and they start calling him Nero, and the number corresponds with that change. Well, then later on, Jerome, 6th, 7th, 8th century, something like that, when they start, because we don't have any of these anymore, I don't think. When they start producing ones that we have, they still called him Nero, but they're like, this number's supposed to be 666, so they went back and changed it. Because they didn't make the association with the Gematria system anymore. So the conclusion, 666, using this system, is Nero Caesar. He's notorious for persecuting the Christians. The mark of the beast. Some of you are laughing, don't get ahead. This interpretation is widely accepted among scholars, especially those who support the early dating of Revelation. And I'll give you an alternative for it. This is my contribution to the article. If you pull out your phone and mom, M-O-M, you type 666. That's terrible. That's terrible. I told that joke one time on Facebook. I got 0 likes.
Yeah.
I think I scared people. I'm like, come on, this is a joke, man. My mom spanked my panty so many times. Anyways, we will pick up next week with Rome in the 5th century. And there is a reason to my madness that we will one day get around to. But I need you to understand the fall of Rome. Okay? So we will do that next week. And Cody's going to help me out. I think